everybody. It's Brian Rundle, Black and White with Brian Rundle and Lana Quest. No Lana tonight. We usually do the show on Tuesday nights live. Lana was not feeling well. In fact, she felt like she might have been coming down with COVID. She did take a test, and luckily she did not have it, but she was not feeling well at all. And when she sent that message, for some reason, I started not feeling well either. So I decided not to do the show last night, but I have made the decision to do it tonight. So how are you guys doing? I, of course, am doing great. I mean, everything's great. The future feels just great. Everything feels fine. Nothing's to worry about. Everything seems to be going exactly how we had it planned. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. Nothing seems to be going as we have had it planned. And there are a lot of worried people out there. There are a lot of scared people. There are a lot of people freaking out over what the future holds, not just for them, not just for their loved ones or their neighbors or the people they work with, but just for the country overall. What nobody really knows what exactly is going to happen. But if you go by what is being said, then you're worried, and you've got a lot of consternation right now. And there are a lot of people who are really checking out of politics. They don't even want to be around it anymore. They don't want to talk about it anymore. They don't want to watch cable news, which in my estimation is great news, because cable news to me has always been garbage. Haven't watched cable news in probably 6 years or so. But you could see people checking out. You could see them checking out of Twitter. You could see them checking out of cable news. You could see them just basically checking out overall because they feel defeated. And quite frankly, that's exactly what Donald Trump, the right, and MAGA want you to feel. They want you to feel defeated. They want you to feel like they run this show now and there's nothing you can do about it. And in a sense, right now, probably right. They do run the show, and there's nothing we can do about it other than stay engaged, keep moving forward, and, don't give in to the threats and don't give in to your fear of what may happen later on. I mean, that's just really the bottom line. We're going to start the show, though, with a couple of people who did show fear. And they did give in, and they did bow down and kiss the ring of Donald Trump. And that is Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski of Morning Joe. Again, I didn't watch cable news, haven't watched it in a very long time, but of course I saw plenty of clips on Twitter and other social media outlets. So I know what a lot of them are saying. And during the time leading up to the election, Joe and Mika had a lot to say. I mean, they were very anti-Trump, and they were doing everything that they could to try to get either Kamala Harris elected or make sure that Donald Trump did not get elected. And they had some very strong words for the ex-president. If you go back to the 2016 election, Mika and Joe and Donald were apparently close, and they were friends. And that's why Donald would come on the show, and he would they would have direct access to him to interview him and to be on the show. And once they started saying negative things about him, he stopped going on the show. That's just who Donald Trump is. He is a very sensitive, snowflake-ish kind of man. Like, if you say good things about him, then you're allowed in his circle for a whatever time period he allows you to be there. If you say anything negative about him, then you are not just, he's not just talking to you, you are shunned, and you are now the enemy. And if you are Donald Trump's enemy, he's going to want to come after you, and he's going to want to make you know that you should not be talking bad about me, and I'm going to make you know it. And back then, the power that he had to really punish those that said anything negative about him was nowhere near what you're going to see coming up if he chooses to go that route, which Mika and Joe apparently do believe he's going to go that route. Now, what I'm going to do first is we're going to play the clip. I'm sure you've seen this a million times, but here is Joe and Mika after months, years actually, of bashing Donald Trump and sticking their chest out and bravely going up against Donald Trump, where so many people would never even think about doing. They would do it, and they were harsh in their criticism of Donald Trump. But here they were, surprising their viewers on Monday morning with this announcement.
Week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-A-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit.
First of all, I'm already offended by this ridiculousness because they're trying to come across as they went in to talk to Donald Trump with their chest out and said, Donald, didn't even call him sir. This is how they're trying to portray this, as if they came in and said, we're coming to tell you just exactly how concerned we are about the picks that you've made and what you're going to do for the future of this country. That is not why they went to go see Donald Trump. They went to go see Donald Trump because they are scared of him. They are scared of the retribution that is going to happen to them based on this upcoming administration. That's exactly why they went there. In fact, George Conway and a few other people had reported, sources close to them said that they are afraid of retribution. And again, look, if you're afraid of retribution, that's fine. But all the things that you said about Donald Trump, and if you felt like that was true, if you felt like if he were to win, because you knew that's a possibility, you're out of your mind if you didn't think that that was a possibility that Donald Trump could win this election, just like you're out of your mind if you didn't think it was a possibility Kamala Harris could win this election. And we're going to go over that in a little while. But this idea that they went in there with chest out and saying, you know what, we went to go sit down with him because we wanted to put him in check. You guys weren't putting anybody in check. He put you in check. You are now bowing down and kissing the ring of Donald Trump, just like everybody else that's associated with him. You know, the people who were strong, the people who actually showed strength are the ones who stand up to people, not the ones who are yes men and say yes and bow down and are afraid of the person that is potentially going to come after you. In fact, pretty much every book on authoritarianism says, do not give in to the leader, especially right off the bat. You give in to the leader, you have already lost. And now we have two voices that were very harsh towards Donald Trump have given in to the leader. And we hope the dominoes don't fall from here, because if it does, then this country's in huge trouble. And you know what? Quite frankly, I wouldn't want anybody to bow down to any leader. I don't give a shit what side you're on. That doesn't matter to me. And I know it's almost impossible to get anybody to believe what I'm saying here. Everybody is going to associate me with Democrat, liberal, progressive, whatever stupid label you want to put on people. I am over the labels. I can't stand labels. I can't stand Democrats. I want to explain one very clear thing here. I don't need Kamala Harris to win. I don't need Joe Biden to win. I don't need a particular person to win an election. What I need are the people who are going to be better for this country and who are going to be the president for everybody, the person who doesn't threaten to jail his political opponents. And before you even get with me on, well, what about the Democrats doing what they did to Donald Trump? The Democrats had nothing to do with that. But again, these words that I'm saying do not matter. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time on this anymore because, in fact, I'm going to get into something as to exactly why I'm not going to get into this much anymore. But let's get back to the clip and I'll finish my rant.
And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was tearful. He was up.
Okay, actually, I mean, you get the point, you get the picture at this point. But here's what's even more irritating. This is a clip the next day of the aftermath of this announcement. And surely they had to have known something was coming. They had to have known that their viewers were not going to be pleased by this, because here's the deal. Regardless of what side you're on, if you felt like the other person was the danger to the country, and the next day that the people that you listen to every day were telling you he was a danger to the country, that he's a threat, that he wants to be a dictator, that he's a fascist, all this stuff. If you heard them the next day say, you know what, we're going to talk it out with them and just see how things go. I just want to let you know we were really tough with them. We scared them a little bit. I just want to let you guys know that. So please don't turn off your TV sets. Well, unfortunately, apparently, according to the ratings systems, that people did turn off their TVs after they made that announcement and have not gone back since. And I don't blame them. I'm glad to hear that, because quite frankly, I think everybody should turn off cable news anyway. Cable news is a detriment to this country. However, the alternative now are these unregulated, unqualified podcasters who people are now getting their information from, which to me is way scarier. Now, if you're asking me, should I go with the cable news or should I go with the podcasters? Stick with fucking cable news. Don't go with the podcasters. Stay far away from podcasters who used to be a game show host for people who eat worms, or who is a bad comedian, or anybody that you just have never heard of before, that has never talked politics in their life, but now all of a sudden that's where you're going to get your news from. These are the people you trust with your political life and news. That's where we're at now. And that scares the shit out of me. And TikTok, you're going to flip through TikTok and see a couple of TikTokers, and they're going to give you their opinion on politics. Quite frankly, I don't give a shit if you don't listen to me. I'm a small YouTube channel. You don't have to take my word for things. I never ask anybody to take my word for anything. You can listen to the words that I say, and then you can go research them later. There's a great line in Simon and Garfunkel song. They say people are hearing without listening. And that's what people are doing now. They're hearing things and taking it as truth without actually listening to what is being said and then following up with it and saying, wait a minute, is this really true? And you could find the truth if you want to, but now we live in a country where people do not care about the truth. They just don't. And I'm done trying to convince people to go look for the truth. I don't care if you do it or not anymore at this point. I truly don't. Think whatever you want. I don't care. But if you're going to come in and you're going to listen to this show, listen to what I have to say. If you don't believe it, or there's a counter to anything I'm ever saying, I have always welcomed every single person to explain to me exactly what I said and exactly where I got it wrong. I'm perfectly fine with that. And if I am wrong, I will admit it. However, I'm going to ask you to do one thing. I'm going to ask you to cite your sources, because I get into this conversation all the time with people, all the time. And I say, great, where did you get that information? Please cite your source. And every single time, literally, I want to say it's 100% of the time, people go, you could go and do your own research. I don't have time to provide this for you. You had time to type me a message. You had time to send me, information about how I was wrong, but you don't have time to do a very quick Google search and show me exactly what I said and where I got it wrong. Literally happens every single time. But here, let's get back to the offensive part. So now, after they got reamed by everybody, all of the people that watched the show, they did not particularly care for their announcement. And so the next day, they come on and try to do damage control. But what is the damage control? The damage control is, we have people who really understand this stuff that contacted us, and they said, great job, guys. But everybody on social media and Twitter, oh my God, these idiots who don't know what they're talking about, there's a disconnect here that we really don't understand. Let's watch this ridiculous announcement, and then we'll go over it.
For the first time, what a massive disconnect there was between social media and the real world. Because we were flooded with phone calls from people all day, literally around the world. Very positive, very supportive, going, I understand what you did, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But once in a while, I would get a text or a call from someone and go, oh man, I hope you're doing okay. And I call him back and I go, well, Eddie Glaude was one of them. I go, Eddie, are you on Twitter? And he goes, I am. I go, okay, well, I'm not. So we've had a good day. Mika just had a wonderful event, and it's fantastic. We're going to do all of us are going to do the best we can do, and we're all working towards a better America.
Take it day by day.
Day by day. And again, you can predict the future by shaping the future. But the reason
he seemed
this is, and first of all, listen, they have no reason to apologize. If they truly feel afraid of what could happen to them, then do whatever it is you feel is best for you. That's fine. But there's going to be ramifications, because there are people out there who are afraid of things that may happen to them. And you know what they're doing? They're doing this. They said, do it. Just do whatever it is that you got to do. If you're telling me I live in the United States of America and I can't express my opinion and I cannot criticize the president of the United States, I can't criticize the administration, then we're not in the United States. We're just not there anymore. And we now live in a country with an authoritarian government. And if you say that because you don't like what somebody in the media has to say about you and you're going to go after them, at some point that could backfire on you, because there are some people who voted for Donald Trump who are not in the cult, as I call it. They're not in they're not in the Donald Trump cult. They don't feel like they need to bow down to Donald Trump, but they voted for him because they heard Joe Rogan and they heard the Nelk brothers, or whatever the hell their names are, and Theo Vaughn, who sounds like possibly the dumbest human being I've ever listened to in my entire life. They listened to these guys and said, this is kind of cool. In fact, you see it now. Being MAGA is cool as shit. I mean, you see fucking NFL players and they're doing the dance that Donald Trump does to the gayest song ever written. And when I say that, I don't mean that as a derogatory term towards gay people. It literally is a gay song by gay people. And NFL players wearing their MAGA hats. You see UFC fighters, they're doing the dance and they are sticking their chest out. Boy, we got you guys. You liberals, get out, get out of everybody's way. We're sick of you. We're done with you. We won. We rule this shit right now, and you can't do anything about it. We're the cool ones. You're not. That's fine. Be the cool ones. Please. go through life being the cool ones. I want you guys to. I want you to take this in. I want you to celebrate it. I want you to be so happy about this victory that you can't even see straight. This is so great for you guys. One thing you're not going to get from me, you're not triggering me. I can 100% promise you that. You're not there's no words or dances or anything that you can do where I'm going to go, oh my God, hey, when Donald's on. Do it. Have fun. This is a great time for you. In fact, we still even have a couple of months before Donald Trump is sworn in. And in these couple months, you can brag, you can celebrate, and you can tell everybody exactly what the future of this country is going to be now, because egg prices are going. I mean, my guess is, based on what I'm hearing, eggs are going to cost probably about 65 cents per dozen, which will be great. Gas prices will probably be somewhere in the $1.50 range, which is going to be awesome. I happen to work in the mortgage industry. I can't wait until Donald Trump takes this magic wand and makes interest rates 2 to 3%. I'm telling you, when that happens, the next time you see my podcast, when this happens, it's going to be in a mansion. It's going to be in the biggest house you've ever seen, because I'm going to make so much money when those rates go back down to 2-3% that maybe I'm going to do the dance with you guys. So if anybody out there, though, if you're a MAGA and you're watching this, if you could do me one favor, can you, just because I'm ignorant, believe me, I have gotten to the point in my life where I know nothing. I truly am an idiot. And everybody that voted for Donald Trump is way smarter than I am. I promise you that's how I feel right now, because that's how the people voted. And anything that I have said in the past, I have to go back and look and go, I don't know, dude. You sounded pretty confident when you were saying this stuff, but you seem kind of like an idiot now. And I'm denying, the things that Donald Trump was going to do. But apparently all of this stuff's going to happen. So I'm going to ask everybody that voted for Donald Trump to educate me. I'm allowing you to educate me, because maybe in the past I was cocky about it and I was, over the top with my language. So I'm going to ask you guys to please educate me. What policy and what exactly does Donald Trump do to get our gas prices back in the $1.80, $1.90 range? What does he do to make private companies go in and lower their prices when generally the government has absolutely nothing to do with egg prices? But what does Donald Trump do to lower these prices? And most importantly, in fact, the other two, I don't even really give a shit about. What does Donald Trump do to make interest rates, him specifically, and what exactly does he do to make interest rates go back down to 2-3%? Some of you may say, well, it's not going to go 2-3%, maybe 4. Is that it? 4, 5? Tell me what the rate's going to go to so I can plan for my future. So I can start saving up for my gigantic house. And, we'll all party together. Trust me, when it happens, I'll come to you and say, hey, man, where's the party? And can you teach me the dance? I want to learn the dance, because being MAGA right now is super cool. It's just the coolest thing going on in the country right now. And look, I can't wait. But anyway, real quick, I want to go back to Joe and Mika. Big Bag Joe and Mika, who now are sitting down with Donald Trump and giving it to him and telling him, hey, guys, keeping an eye on you. Just want to let you know that. This is Joe Scarborough. Here's a little montage of him talking about Donald Trump over the last few years.
Time to sound the alarm. When is the time to start saying, well, does this look like Germany in 1932?
This is not a reach. I could go back and talk about Nazi Germany, and I do it without any concerns whatsoever. And if people can't start drawing the parallels, well, you're just stupid, or you have your head in the sand, or you're one of them.
We still have an electorate
70 million plus that will be voting for a man who said he was going to assassinate for treason the chairman of the Joint Chiefs because he didn't support him on January the 6th, who has said just in the recent days he was going to execute Liz Cheney with a firing squad, 9 guns pointed and shooting at her face. A man who has said that he was going to shut down CBS because he didn't like how they edited an interview. A man who said he was going to be a dictator from day one.
On Friday, we were given the opportunity to
All right, we saw this part already. So that was Big Bag Joe, and he was a tough talking guy. And now all of a sudden the tough talk seemingly has gone away. I mean, you know, again, according to him, he went into Mar-a-Lago and expressed his concerns with Mika. And let's see how that goes, because Donald Trump is usually somebody that takes in a lot of what is told to him, and he considers a lot of things. He really sits down and he goes, you know what, maybe I should take into consideration that Joe and Mika are concerned, and I might change some of the things in my administration because they're keeping an eye on me and they're going to hold me to account. So again, I want to go back. I want to say, if they truly are afraid, then you know what? Do what you got to do. That's fine. But there are people who are afraid too, but they're moving forward and they understand how to deflect the playbook of the authoritarian government that seemingly Donald Trump and this administration want to do. But before we get, I want to talk about that administration. Before I move on, I want to check, because it looked like there were some comments, and I apologize because usually I can only see the comments on anybody that's watching on Twitter or watching on YouTube, but there are comments on Instagram that I can't see, but if I switch over, I can see them. So there was a few comments. And so here's one thing. Everybody that is in the comments on Instagram are people I know. So I'm going to answer some of the people I know here. This is Josue, who I know. If that was the case, why didn't he go after Hillary in 2016 after being ejected? I'm assuming he means elected. I'm very easy answer, because at that time he didn't have the administration where anybody would go after Hillary Clinton. You need somebody in the Department of Justice. You need the Attorney General to go after him. So you have people, and there were guardrails back then. There are no guardrails this time. And that's why people like Joe and Mika and Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and people who tell jokes are scared that there's a possibility that something could happen. Johnny Reeves, I've spoken to Johnny Reeves about this. We do know what will happen this time because we already had him 4 years ago. He was actually kind of mellow and humble when he met with Biden. I think the worries are not going to happen. Well, I hope you're right, Johnny. There's a possibility of that. There is a possibility that the things people are truly afraid of, there is a possibility that they will not happen to the extent of which people think that they might. However, there are plenty of things that are 100% going to happen that people should be scared about. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But there's also a new attitude in this country where the MAGA people, and again, we could keep comparing 2016 and 2024. Definitely not the same. There are two totally different sets of circumstances. And the reason why they're different sets of circumstances is because back then they did control the Senate, they did control the House, but they controlled it with people who still believed in the Constitution. They still believed in America, and they still believed that jailing your opponents and doing all this stuff is nutty, and people wouldn't have done it. Now we're putting people in the administration, which we're going to go over in a little bit. So if you do have this question and you want to hear what I have to say about the upcoming administration and how it's different than 2016, maybe this will answer the question a little bit better. But we're night and day between the two. Johnny says that I didn't vote for those reasons. President does not control the Fed. Yeah, thank God the president doesn't control the Fed. But you know what? Donald Trump absolutely 100% wants to control the Fed. He wants to eliminate Powell from the head or the chair as the chairman of the Federal Reserve. He wants to get rid of him. In fact, we know that because a reporter even asked Powell, what happens? What if he fires you? He's like, he has no legal precedent to do that. You can't fire the Fed chair. So, or I guess you can. He asked him something about what he can do as far as the Federal Reserve chair, but he, there is concern that if Jerome Powell is gone, that Donald Trump himself said that he feels like he can run the Federal Reserve better than anybody else, that he's better than doing it, just like he says everything else. He knows them more than the generals. He knows more than everybody about everything, and that includes the Federal Reserve. Let me just tell you something. If Donald Trump is in charge of the Federal Reserve, pack your shit and move right out of this country. You need to flee to Mexico. You need to flee to the places that people are coming and fleeing to America, because this country is done. Why do I say that? Because Donald Trump has a history of ruining every business he's ever put his hands on. You know what? Shit. I already said I'm not going to try to convince MAGA people of any truths anymore. Or forget it. I apologize. Not just MAGA people, any people. What difference does it make? Truth does not matter. I could show black and white facts. Like, there's no arguing that Donald Trump has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. That's not an argument. That just isn't. But we're going to ignore that, and we're going to still call him one of the greatest businessmen anybody's ever seen. So that's why, you know what? I lay back anymore and I go, why am I worried about this anymore? Who cares? People are getting their news from Joe Rogan and TikTok. That's where people get their solid news from. This is where people are now convinced about things because Joe Rogan and TikTok told them. And Brian Rundle on his very small black and white show with Brian Rundle and Lana Kless. By the way, please like and subscribe if you are watching this. I see 65 people watching, which I appreciate. Thank you if you are sitting through my ridiculousness, because I'm sure for a lot of people, what I'm saying is ridiculous. And for maybe some of you, you're like, I don't understand what this guy's saying. Regardless, because we're on a place now where we're either very happy or we're very sad. Just hit the like button. And if you can, some of you hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate that. I got a couple of comments here from JD and Patrick, so let's read them. JD, not to mention that running a country is absolutely nothing like running a business. JD, you're absolutely correct. But as I said, JD and I could sit here and go over the reasons why this makes sense and the reasons why that's logistical to think that somebody who has filed for bankruptcy numerous times, to think that somebody who has had literally numerous businesses that he has failed with, including 3 casinos, which if you ask anybody that owns a casino, it's literally impossible to fail in the casino business. Why did Donald Trump fail in the casino business? He failed in the casino business because he spent too much money to build a casino that could never make the money back regardless of how well. So if you took what an above average casino did and you put together all the numbers and you made the assessment now, okay, how do I get a return on investment? Okay, so what I need to do is my cost for this casino needs to be lower than the above average. Let's say, forget it, just the average amount that a casino makes. Take the average amount and your cost total want to be less than that. I think everybody would agree with that, right? And if anybody disagrees with that, please explain to me why I'm wrong. But you want to take that and assess that. But what Donald Trump did was he took the average amount a casino makes and he spent, you can't even see my hand, spent way, way, way more. How and why did he spend way more? He spent way, way more because he had to take out a loan to finish the completion of the Taj Mahal. And the loan he had to take out was a loan that he couldn't get anywhere else because no banks would loan him the money. But he was so determined to finish this casino and finish building this casino that he was willing to take out high interest rate loans just so he could finish it and say, now I own this casino. And there was a guy who wrote an article and said, this isn't going to work out. And he got mad at the guy who wrote the article, had him fired. The guy who wrote the article sued him because it turned out everything that the guy said in the article was true. And the guy, they settled for an undisclosed amount. But the guy has said that, let's just put it this way, I'm living a very comfortable life. But again, that's a fact that doesn't matter. Don't worry about my facts. I don't even need you to research it anymore. Nobody needs to research anything anymore because Joe Rogan's going to tell you exactly what's going down. So are is it the Nelk brothers? Is that who that we're contending with nowadays? The Nelk brothers and Theo Vaughn. Theo Vaughn will tell you what's going on. Patrick, not accepting Morning Joe's mumbo jumbo can depend on their broadcast to discuss what corporate companies are doing now, overstocking now to make double profits in January. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I agree with, I'm sorry, I said Patrick, Patricia. I apologize, Patricia. Yeah, I personally, again, I've stopped watching cable news for a very long time now because I really think all of it's garbage. I see these clips on CNN and I like, what's the lady's name? She's on later nights on CNN, but she has this but they have this panel of people with that one guy, Scott, whatever, who pisses everybody off. And that's all it is now. It's just a bunch of people, controversy, yelling at each other. It's Jerry Springer. Politics is now Jerry Springer. Cable news is now Jerry Springer. How do we get more people to watch? By getting people to yell at each other, by getting controversy, by doing all this, instead of having real discussion and real conversation. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. And again, I know I've been told, but Joe Rogan, he just sits back and he has regular conversation with people, and they're very intellectual people on there. You should listen. There's PhDs on there. There's scientists. Do me a favor. I know enough about Joe Rogan already. I've seen everything about Joe Rogan. I know everything about Joe Rogan. I know about the show. I know about the guests. I know about the supposed brilliant conversations that Joe Rogan has with these people, but I also know about how stupid Joe Rogan is on so many things. I mean, there's too many clips of Joe Rogan's show for me to know that this guy's not bright when it comes to politics at all. He's not bright about this at all. And yeah, I feel like I know way more about this than Joe Rogan does. Now, I'm not Joe Rogan. I won't even be 1/1,000,000th of what Joe Rogan is. But see, that's the scary thing. Not that I need to be the Joe Rogan. I certainly don't. There are people 1,000 times better than me at this. 1,000 times better. David Pakman, Brian Tyler Cohen. I like these people. These guys are really good. Destiny, excellent. These guys know facts. And I know facts, but these guys are really, really good. But Joe Rogan is one of our news sources. Joe Rogan is a place where a presidential candidate has to find themselves. The country's done. We're done if that is the case. JD says Joe Rogan is the ultimate hypocrite. There's no legitimate reason you could go from a Bernie supporter to being a pro-Trump in 2016, perhaps. And Trump's first term, no way. JD, I'm glad you bring that up because, not only Joe Rogan, and I'm going to address that too, not only Joe Rogan, but do you know how many people I get in the comment section saying, I used to be a Democrat, but now? There's no logistical person who says they used to be a Democrat, but now I'm a Trump person. That doesn't exist. There might be a extremely low amount of people where that exists. But that really does, that is on the same level as the amount of transgender people in this country, that it barely exists. So speaking of that, let's move on to the next subject because I rambled on enough. Little Philosophy, hey, thank you for joining me, buddy. Little Philosophy is somebody that I battle with back and forth. I don't know. Do you call it a battle? I'm sure he thinks he dominates me in all these conversations. Maybe he does. I don't know. You can go back and read the comments and see if he dominates me. I'm not looking to dominate Little Philosophy or anybody else in these conversations. I really would like to have just some conversation, but it's difficult now in these the endless struggle, we'll call it. But I thank you for joining me. I do appreciate when you come in. I do appreciate when you comment. I really do. But let's move on to the next subject and the transgender so-called issue. Now, if you've ever heard me on this show, or if you listen to my old podcast, Run's House podcast, I did a full podcast on the transgender so-called issue. Never been an issue with me. And I think it is one of these things that the right has brilliantly taken and shoved down the throats of people, that this is a subject that the left needs so badly in their life that if we take away anything transgender, or if we say anything bad about transgender, we're going to forget about everything else that's going on in this country. We're going to drop it. And we are focusing on these transgender people because that's what we care about first, or maybe even second or third. It's brilliant. I got to admit, brilliant job, because it helped them win the election, because there's a lot of very uneducated, insecure men who hear transgender and it gets them, oh my God, transgender. If I admit that I like something like transgender, you know what might happen? People might think I'm gay. And if people think I'm gay, then my life's fucking over, even though probably half of them have some sort of gay tendencies. That's for a psychologist, and maybe we'll have a psychologist on one day and discuss that. But this idea that the transgender issue is a top issue with the Democrats has been a brilliant move. Just a brilliant move by Republicans, because it is stuck, and you've had people, maybe even some people on the left, who got gaslit into this idea that the transgender, which by the way is 0.6% of the population, it barely exists. And you know what barely exists even more? Boys playing in girls sports. It literally doesn't exist. And if it does, it doesn't exist on any level where I give a shit about it. In fact, I called it my give a shit meter. And if I were to take my give a shit meter and it was to go from 0 to 10, where 10 is where I give a shit the most, and 0 where I don't give a shit at all. In fact, most scales go from 1 to 10. Mine goes 0 to 10. You know why there's a 0 on my scale? Because that's how much I give a shit about the transgender issue. Now, that doesn't mean I don't defend transgenders and I don't think that they should have the same rights as everybody else. But based on the issue that you guys are trying to force down our throats as the ones as to what you are saying we believe, 0 on my give a shit meter. 0. It doesn't exist, because the scare tactics you are using do not exist about transgender. But you know who's going to make it an issue? Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace, she's going to make this an issue. Well, first of all, without ever meeting. So let's back up, by the way. There was somebody that was elected to Congress, and her name is Sarah McBride. Sarah McBride used to be, I believe his name was Tim McBride, and now he identifies as a woman. I have no idea whether or not he made the full transition or not to a woman, but regardless, Sarah wants to be called Sarah, wants to be called a she. Again, you want to go back to the give a shit meter. And I wonder if everybody else has a give a shit meter and where this falls on your give a shit meter, and explain to me where it falls and why it falls on that number. So calling her Sarah and calling her is a 0 on my give a shit meter. Like, Sarah, you want me to call you her? You got it. No problem. I'm going to go to bed tonight. I'm going to wake up tomorrow the same exact person as if I called you she. Actually, I take that back. I'm not going to wake up the same person. I'm going to wake up a better person by calling her she and just acknowledging that that's what she wants to be and move on with my life. But for somebody that's going to go to bed and wake up the next day and go, nope, fuck that. I ain't doing that shit. That's a he. And you know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to do something like this to welcome him or whatever his name is to Congress. Great. By the way, I want to keep in mind, these are the Jesus people. These are the Christians who are accepting of everybody. I'm not a Christian person. I'm not a religious person. From my understanding, Jesus is accepting of everybody, and everybody is God's children. That's at least my recollection of how just basically the gist of the Bible and Christianity is supposed to be. Now, I promise you, if you tell me I'm wrong, I'll back off, because I'm going to at least listen to what you have to say about it, and I'll do some research on it and see if you're right. And then my apologies if you are. But that's how Nancy Mace decided that without ever meeting this person ever in her lifetime, this is how she's going to welcome them. Now, I want to ask anybody out there that has any kind of feelings. Johnny, who was in my comments, who told me he knows somebody that's transgender. Is this something you agree with? Do you agree with a bully tactic on somebody who, first of all, there was never one word, not one word of this woman winning her congressional seat and saying, I can't wait to go in there and use the women's bathroom. If they did and they were cocky about it prior to her doing this, full apologies. Because I'm going to say, then you just started something for nothing. And Nancy Mace is now feeling it necessary to respond to your loud mouth about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and not give a shit. My understanding, though, is that Miss McBride did nothing of the sort. So the preemptive attack, if indeed it is the preemptive attack that it seems to be, anybody out there that voted for Donald Trump, is this a tactic that you find cool and necessary? Because if you say it's cool, again, I have to agree with it, because I have already acknowledged you guys are the cool guys now. You guys are the people who run shit, and you understand what's cool now. So if that's cool to you, please let me know. And let me know, too, if you go to church and you believe in Jesus. But here's Nancy Mace again, and this is her defense on her stance on whether or not Sarah McBride should be using the women's bathroom.
And for a man, if someone with a penis is in the women's locker room, that's not okay. And I'm a victim of abuse myself. I'm a rape survivor. I have PTSD from the abuse I've suffered at the hands of a man. And I know how vulnerable women and girls are in private spaces. So I'm absolutely 100% going to stand in the way of any man who wants to be in a women's restroom, in our locker rooms, in our changing rooms. I will be there fighting you every step of the way.
How do you think this
Can I just tell you something? I don't feel her to be genuine about this at all. I really don't. This is really just a bully tactic, and this is her playing the we run shit, we're MAGA, we are the full-time sheriff in town, and there's nothing you can say now. Nothing. I am going to make this an issue, even though nobody's made this an issue before. I'm making this an issue. You know why? Because I can, and because I'm a bully, and because I can tell you to go fuck yourself. She's not genuine about this. She doesn't give a shit about little girls in bathrooms, because if she did give a shit, because she would have the same energy about this, about the pastors and the priests in all these churches who are molesting little kids. In fact, I guarantee you, I could pull up way more stories of people in the church who are molesting children than I can transgender people. That's a challenge that I am willing to guarantee. I'm willing to guarantee that that's a fact. So if anybody wants to take that challenge with me, I'd love to do it. You can email me at runshousepodcast@gmail.com. That's my old email address from my old podcast. So runshousepodcast@gmail.com. But here's the thing. And this is a response from Sarah McBride, which this, by the way, needs to be the tactic from here on out. You know what? You want to sit there and you want to be a bully towards people. You want to just preemptively attack somebody without them saying one word about any of this stuff. You want to do it? Go right ahead, because at some point, this is all going to backfire on you. That I am positive of, because human beings, after a little while, you got to remember, everybody that voted for Donald Trump's not in the cult. They're not going to just take every word that comes out of the cult and just bows down to. Not happening. There are a lot of people who voted for it because of the economy, and they're very confused on how the economy works, and that they believed that what Donald Trump did 4 years ago was actually something that he did to make the economy good. I can assure you that's not the case, but I'm not interested in giving facts about that anymore, because facts don't matter, as I've stated many times. Doesn't matter. So believe whatever you want about the economy, and believe that Donald Trump is going to wave his magic wand and everything's going to be perfect. Again, the only thing I would ask is explain to me when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen. But here is Sarah McBride's response, which I found to be perfect. She says, "I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. I'm here to fight for Delawareans and to bring down costs facing families. Like all members, I will follow the rules as outlined by Speaker Johnson, even if I disagree with them. This effort to distract from the real issues facing this country hasn't distracted me over the last several days, as I've remained hard at work preparing to represent the greatest state in the union come January. Serving the 119th Congress will be the honor of a lifetime, and I continue to look forward to getting to know my future colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Each of us were sent here because voters saw something in us that they value. I have loved getting to see those qualities in the future colleagues that I've met, and I look forward to seeing those qualities in every member come January." Good luck with that, Ms. McBride. I hope all my colleagues will seek to do the same with me. Well, when you have colleagues like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace is not going to be part of that anymore, but obviously she still is a colleague. I do wish you the best of luck there, because they've also tried to run a little bit on bringing the country together. They're going to bring everybody together. They have no interest in bringing together you and I. They just don't. If you're a MAGA and they want you and I fighting. I promise you they do. And again, I'm going to go over something that I read a little while ago that's very interesting, that could prove out to be exactly what the plan is and was for a very long time. But they have no interest. Their interest is to play not just the people in power. They are interested in playing the people in power and daring you to cross them, daring you. In fact, you see it now, not just with people in Congress. You're seeing it in the media. You see some of these interviewers. If you're on there and you even thought about mentioning Kamala Harris's name, much less vote for her, they will attack you with their questions. Do you feel like an idiot now? Do you feel stupid now? Do you feel... And again, it's Jerry Springer. These used to be reputable people, some of them reputable people. And now they have this chest out idea that they're going to put down anybody that you even thought about voting against Donald Trump. Oh, you have no idea what's in store for you, buddy. Right now, you're safe because Joe Biden's still in charge. But wait until January 20th. As soon as that day hits, all hell's breaking loose. You people too. Fellow Americans, it's going to happen. But again, at some point, that's going to backfire, because we've already been divided as a country. We've already had friends, families divided that may never talk to each other ever again. Very sad. And that's very possible. But there are still those who don't really have a grasp on everything that's going on. They just kind of look at everything through the periphery. And when you look at everything through the periphery, you don't have you don't have the solid foundation of which way I should go, which way I should believe. But what you also do is you have human instincts, and your human instincts say, that's right, that's not right. And those human instincts for the people who say, you know what, that's not right, maybe I made a mistake, I have a feeling that that may be coming to fruition. I'm going to get to the comments here in a minute, but I also want to play the response of the House, the leader of the House for the Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries, had this to say about Nancy Mace and all the attacks and the so-called bathroom controversy, which this bathroom controversy is just so stupid.
As Catherine Clark indicated, the notion that this incoming small House Republican conference majority is beginning to transition to the new Congress by bullying a member of Congress. This is what we're doing. This is the lesson that you've drawn from the election in November. This is your priority, that you want to bully a member of Congress as opposed to welcoming her to join this body so that all of us can work together.
By the way, that's always ultimately the idea of government, to work together. As long as we continue to have this kind of government, it just isn't going to happen. When we keep electing some of the most unqualified people to ever be elected to people who make the laws in this country, specifically a Marjorie Taylor Greene and specifically a Lauren Boebert, this is what we're going to have, because they're in there not to make laws. They're in there to troll. They're in there to troll the libtards. That's what they're there to do. That's my assessment of it. I know anybody in here that's MAGA, they might completely disagree, which again, it's fine. It is what it is, but let's finish up.
To get things done and deliver real results for the American people, I think it causes you to have to ask the question, what was all the rhetoric about over the last several months?
Right.
On the campaign trail? Did you lie to the American people? Are you really focused on solving problems for the American people? Are you really focused on lowering costs, addressing the high cost of living? Are you really focused on housing prices? Apparently not. Are you really focused on grocery prices? Apparently not. Are you focused, as Republicans, on building a healthy economy? Apparently you are not.
Okay, so you get the point there, and he's right. I mean, when you are elected to Congress and you're coming in, and the new Congress is coming in, even if you're part of the old Congress and you have a new president coming in, the first order of business is supposedly to be taking care of the things of why people voted the most. And if you go and look at any research on why people voted, transgender issues barely makes the cut. Truly does. I mean, it really doesn't even make the cut. But this right now is in the news. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about one person who's transgender, who's coming into Congress and talking about they can't use our bathroom when, first of all, nobody even mentioned anything about using a bathroom. Wasn't even talked about. But that's what they're focusing on. Now, if you want me to take you seriously, then I want to hear you say, we're going to do things to help housing costs. We're going to do things to help anything that people voted for, even though, again, I don't want to get into the facts of this, even though presidents don't walk in and say, this is what the price of eggs need to be, and if you don't do it, you're in big trouble. How it works. But that's why people voted, because eggs are going to be cheaper with Donald Trump. So I want you to come in and explain to me how eggs are going to be cheaper. As I said earlier, I want you to tell me why things are going to be better, why Americans voted for you, because they feel now that things are going to be better. I have a bad feeling there's going to be a really, really, really hard smack in the face for a lot of Americans, including myself, although I see the smack coming. But we'll see. And I'm not rooting against it, not rooting for a bad economy. Jesus, bad economy. You'll be seeing me. I might be having to do this podcast from somebody else's home or on the streets. Who knows? I'm exaggerating, but anyway, let's get to the comments. Let me catch up here. Let's go back to little philosophy. That basic ties into the woke business agenda. Like you mentioned before, there's no such thing as woke. I've said that a million times. That's another word that is being used that is way overused, and it's used again to bother and to scare. I hate to say it, and this is going to bother people, but it's meant to bother white people. I mean, it just is. This is something that has been a tactic that has worked for a very, very long time. When the civil rights movement happened and Black people were able to vote and Black people were actually being able to speak more and women were able to speak more and all these people were able to speak more. When the Reagan administration came around, that was the plan. They figured out, what do we need to do to win this election? I know exactly what we need to do. We need to get white people on our side. We need especially white men, because if we freak out white men and we give them any kind of inkling that if you take from the government, you know who you're like? You're like those Black people. And if you're like those Black people, are you going to accept that? And that drove white people crazy. White men drove them nuts. I ain't no Black person who lives off food stamps. I ain't doing that shit. I'm picking myself up by my bootstraps, just like Ronald Reagan tells me to do. So they got all proud, and they would suffer through so many things in their lives and not get the government assistance that they probably could have gotten, that would have saved them in so many different ways, that they got scared into thinking that they would be lumped in the same way of people that are not like them. And that worked. It worked like a charm. I mean, and that just, and that has continued for a very long time. But then when you throw in Fox News, you throw in Newsmax, you throw in unregulated podcasters, man, you could really scare the shit out of people. Now you could scare men by not just with thinking that you're like the other people, but you could scare them into thinking, you know what's going to happen if you defend somebody in the transgender community or somebody that's gay? They're going to think you're gay. And you know what that means? I don't know how you walk around. If they're going to think you're gay, can you handle that, man? Because you're a what's the stupid term? An alpha. Alpha. Stupid term. Another stupid term. First of all, if you use the word alpha, you're a loser. And if you use it for another man, you might be gay. There might be some at least bisexual sort of thing there, that if you're using the term alpha for another man, I don't know, man. That's just for me personally. This is my only assessment on it. This is not a scientific fact. This is just me saying, if you're calling another man an alpha, I don't know, man. I mean, there's something you might, and there's nothing wrong with it. If you are, that's fine. But don't let the rage get to you and make you angry and let you hold that stuff in. Go talk to a therapist. Go talk to somebody close to you, that there is something on your mind that you may want to tell them, and that's okay. So see, this is a place where you could come to where we're all on the same page and we're all accepting of each other. So if you have those thoughts and feelings, go tell somebody so you're not angry, so they don't anger you into voting for a guy who is, on at least on paper, looking to ruin this country. Let's see. True, it rarely occurs, but once it happens, it gets the national news. Right, little philosophy, and that's part of the problem, is that we take the, what do they call it? The mountain into a molehill, or molehill into a mountain, whatever the hell they say. That's what happens. We take these very, very small instances and they are blown up like they should be the top news. And this is the tactic. This is the tactic to confuse us, to get us all riled up and angry, to take us away from what is really going on and what they really want to do. And I'm telling you, this is the administration more than any administration in the history of the country that wants you confused so they can do the kind of things that if you really understood or knew what they were trying to do, you would never accept. Never. I think I'd care more if I messed up and said the wrong pronoun, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, if at least if you have some sort of capacity to say transgender people exist. And by the way, with transgender people, real quick, I don't know if people know this or not, because you would think that transgender people started in 2020 when Joe Biden took office. That's when we saw the very first transgender person. That's not true. Very first transgender person was back in the 1800s. So transgender people have been around for a long time and they're not going anywhere. So now you got to make the decision in your human brain, and you've got to make it with the idea of whether or not you are somebody that is caring and is accepting, or you got to make it to something that makes you angry, and you got to figure out, why does this make you angry, as to whether or not I will call somebody who's transgender, somebody you may never meet in your life. I would imagine that most people maybe never even met a transgender person. If they have, it's been one. To call them she or he or whatever. Who cares? Why do you care? What difference does it make? How does this change your life by taking a stance against that? I have no idea. Is this a biblical thing? Is it a religious thing? Are you going against Jesus if you say she? Is that so? You know what? I don't know Jesus. I don't. But I'm guessing that if he came down and sat right next to me, if I could have him a guest on the podcast, in fact, I'm going to reach out to him and see if he will come out and just ask him, say, Jesus, can I ask you a question? If somebody were to call somebody transgender that went from a boy to a girl and called him she, would you personally have a problem with that? Now, the interesting part is if Jesus said, no, of course not. I mean, look, I mean, it's even if Jesus said, I don't get it, I really don't understand it. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's a human being. We made that human being. Me and my dad. We made this human being, sent him down to earth. And I don't feel any reason to harass this person. I don't feel any reason to begrudge anything about this person. So, all right. But my problem is, if Jesus even said it, would you still listen to Donald Trump about it? Would you still listen to JD Vance about it? Elon Musk, who has a transgender child and won't even talk to that child anymore? Would you listen to Jesus, or do you listen to them? Joe Rogan, who knows? But then again, there goes less trans people than churches. There are less transgender people than churches. No question about it. I agree with you. But just a percentage-wise, much higher amount of people in the churches being molested by transgender. But I also challenge anybody to find me the stories of where people are going, I want to be a girl now. And the reason why I want to be a girl, I don't even want to do the whole thing, but I want to be a girl so I can walk into the girls' restroom and I can show them my penis. That's why I want to do this. This is my ultimate goal. Or I want to sign up for the boxing league and beat the shit out of all of your daughters' girls, or all of your daughters. I want to beat them up. So I don't know. JD says, it really pisses me off that they immediately link being transgender with being a threat to people. And a sexual threat, JD. Even on top of that, I said this in the podcast that I did on transgender people, is that they associate transgender people with sexuality all the time. It's always about sexuality. It's always about molestation of children, even though there is no proof, literally no proof, because there's literally no transgender people, but there's literally no proof of transgender people making that transition so they can molest children or they can be sexual predators. There's no proof. And as I said before, there's plenty of transgender people that have zero sex at all. And I am also going to guarantee that a lot of people making accusations about these transgender people have no sex at all as well. Not to mention, it happens so much in schools. It's insane. I'm assuming you're talking about the molestation of children. So yeah, if Nancy Mace really cared about the children, let's go after the schools. Let's go after the churches. Let's go after the numerous police officers that I always see that are getting busted for molestation, absolutely, grooming, molestation, etc. And absolutely, the Republicans have been running on the Southern strategy since Reagan, 100%. And if people really wanted to study that, they would have back in the times when truth and facts mattered. But right now, truth and facts don't matter. So I'm not even asking anybody to bother with truth and facts. Screw it, doesn't matter. And I want to just check real quick. Let me go to Instagram to see if anybody else has made a comment. I don't think they have. Okay, so let's move on with the show. We have a hell of a cabinet coming our way. And the first clip I'm going to play is by the border czar. This guy's a tough guy. He's a tough customer. And I'm telling you right now, you listen to him and you're going to run scared because Tom Homan means business. And if you question Tom Homan, you're not only questioning him, you're questioning the rule of law and you're questioning King Donald Trump. And you don't want to do that on his watch because when he talks, I'm telling you right now, he's going to scare the shit out of you. So I'm going to play this clip. And if there's children in the room, remove them. Because this guy's super scary. And he's going to let you know. This is him commenting on the mayor of Boston, who has said that she is not going to comply with the administration coming in and just removing immigrants. And this is the warning that he has for her.
Defending our residents every possible way. Well, she's not very smart, I'll give her that. Because
by the way, this is another tactic of MAGA that all these women that speak, not very smart. Like Kamala Harris. You know how many people voted for Kamala Harris that said, man, she didn't know shit. She was stupid. She didn't even know how to complete sentences. She didn't know, she couldn't answer a question. That's the tactic that we have to deal with now, that everybody on the left is stupid. Now, there's going to be arguments. They said that about us. No, I said that about you. People like me, but not people in government. You're not going to find people in government that said that the people in government on the right were flat stupid. You wouldn't hear that. No, yeah. Did they start doing it with Donald Trump a little bit later after a while when they said, you know what? If this guy's just going to keep doing this dumb shit, then we're just going to do it back. Yeah, that happened. Is that a tactic that you want to take? Who knows? That's up to them. Let them figure that out. But for the most part, people in government didn't call the other people in government stupid, but that's their tactic now. But let's listen to tough guy Tom.
what I just said is President Trump's going to prioritize public safety threats. What mayor or governor doesn't want public safety threats out of their community?
Sure.
And that's her number one responsibility, is protect her communities. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So she helps us, she gets the hell out of the way, because we're going to do it. And look, there's a clear line here, and they can't cross a clear line. I would suggest she read Title 8, United States Code 1324 III, that says, you know, you can't harbor or conceal an illegal alien from front of law enforcement officers. So I hope she don't cross that line. They can not cooperate, but there are certain laws in place that they can't cross, and I hope she doesn't cross it. But
yeah, and the interviewer there with his smirk on his face, like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. I cannot wait to see these libtards cry. This is going to be so great. Back to what Tom Homan was saying. First of all, we already deport people out of this country. It already happens. Biden's deported numerous people out of this country, and they target the people who are criminals. So this idea that you're going to paint this as you're the Superman for the country, you're doing this because you're doing it for the American people. That's why you're doing this. That's not why they're doing this. Again, they're not genuine about any of this shit. That has nothing to do with why they're doing this. They're doing this because they're just terrible people. They just are terrible people. And I've got more news for you. Anybody that does not, I'm going to tell a fact. Just take it with a grain of salt. Anybody that thinks that deporting immigrants documented or undocumented, is a great idea for the economy, is going to be in for a very big surprise, because a lot of the undocumented immigrants, who, by the way, are still here legally, they're here under asylum. There are some people who snuck in, and but there are some other undocumented immigrants who are not here necessarily illegally. They're just waiting to get asylum, going through the process and doing all that stuff. And these are the people they want to get rid of. But these are people who are taking jobs that no American's going to take. I had somebody tell me, okay, so what happens when they get rid of all these undocumented immigrants and all these jobs are open? Well, it's time to make people in this country start going to work. First of all, you don't make anybody in this country go to work. That's not how it works. And second of all, the amount of money that is being paid to these undocumented immigrants is at least half of what you would have to pay Americans to work that same job. So if you had to pay the Americans more to work the job, what do you think happens to the cost of the homes that are being built, of the crops, of everything else that goes up when you have to pay your employees more? What do you think happens? I'm not even interested in giving the answer. I'm going to let you figure that one out on your own, but it's not good for the economy. I know Joe Rogan is the person that we listen to now, and he's going to tell us, or the Joe Rogan types, they're going to explain to us how the economy works. And I hope they're right, because it doesn't sound right. I tend to listen to Nobel laureates, people who have been given awards and have been recognized for their work in the field of the economy and why it's a bad idea. I know that sounds crazy. I'm going to stick with that for a little while longer until I'm proven wrong. But none of them think that this is a good idea. None of them for the economy. Every single one of them thinks it's a horrible idea. And not to mention, a lot of the people who voted for Donald Trump, Latino people, some of your family members, gone. You don't think it's going to happen to them? Well, it ain't going to happen to my mother-in-law. No chance. Really? Okay. Well, I hope you're right. I hope it doesn't happen. And I think somebody said earlier, maybe it's not going to be as bad as we think. I'm hoping it's not. But this is what they're saying. So when they're saying it, why would I want to take a chance? If somebody were to say to you, you're at work, and they say, you know what? When you get home, I'm going to be there. And when you get home and when I'm there, I'm going to shoot you. Would you just go home and take the chance that they're not there? Or would you just say, well, maybe I shouldn't go home. I better go somewhere else or call somebody and have them come with me? Something. I would imagine that's the case. So why would you take a chance? If they're telling you this is what they're going to do, they're telling you this is it, why would you take the chance? Mind-boggling to me. Makes no sense. What also makes no sense is this upcoming cabinet that we have. And this upcoming cabinet so far looks like it is, let's just put it this way, one of the most concerning cabinets in the history of this country. And not just because they're unqualified people. There are so many people that have zero qualifications for the position that they're being held in some of the most important positions in this country. That includes the defense, that our country's defense. That includes the Department of Justice. That includes so many different things. But there is a theme a little bit with some of the appointees in this administration that the Christian people just don't seem to care about, or they just don't want to believe. And that theme is that a lot of them have some issues with some proclivities to forcing themselves upon women when women do not want them being, they don't want to be forced upon. The first person in this cabinet is the person that you people elected as president of the United States. His name is Donald Trump. And he was found literally liable for SA on E. Jean Carroll. Now, you know what I've heard all the time? You really believe that? First of all, she's not even that good looking. Donald Trump would never assault her. What are you, insane? And plus, she's crazy. She's nuts. No chance. However, it did go through an actual trial where they heard witnesses and they heard evidence. And through the witnesses and evidence, he was found guilty by a jury of 12 people. All of them said, yeah, he's guilty. Yeah, but where was the trial? It was in New York. There you go. Okay, so what are we saying now? Are we saying that no Republicans are allowed to go through trial in New York? Is that what you're saying? Because no New Yorker is capable of not being biased when it comes to a trial. So every single trial now, if it is a Republican, because I don't hear Democrats saying, hey, this was in Alabama, then, this isn't fair. I've never heard this before in my life, ever. Literally, I've never heard anybody say the jurisdiction, because of the political leanings, is the reason why I lost this case. Never heard it in my life. Please correct me if I'm wrong, if this is an epidemic of things that have happened in the past. But I've never heard this before in the past. But now Donald Trump says it. Oh, Democratic judge, liberal jury, liberal city. These trials, they just don't start. There's a beginning and an end to the trial. And in between the beginning and the end, they pick juries. And did you know that the defense is allowed to weed out people in this jury? And they're allowed to have people on this jury that they feel sympathetic towards Donald Trump. Somebody in the jury that's on Truth Social, which, by the way, somebody in that jury got their news from Truth Social, got their news from X, got their news from other right-wing places. But because it was in New York City and Fox News and the right has already painted New York City as this liberal town that you can't get a fair shake in, which, by the way, another dangerous thing that goes on in this country, when you literally have a news channel that not only is not reporting all the facts about what's happening, they are countering all of them, all in the effort to make sure that their guy gets elected. Now, you could sit here and try to tell me this happens on CNN and MSNBC, but it's nowhere near the same thing. Nowhere near the same thing. Yeah, do you have the Joy Reids, the Rachel Maddows, and all that stuff who will rag on Donald Trump all the time? 100%. There's no question about it. First of all, they don't have the viewership that Fox does. Second of all, they don't do it in a manner. What they'll do is they'll report on Donald Trump and they'll report negative things that they have done the research on and are facts. But Fox News will take facts and they will twist them and say, not only did this not happen, or not only are we not going to tell you the facts, this didn't even happen the way they're saying it. And if it did, the reason why it happened is because they're in that New York City. That's why it happened. Steph, that's my doggy. Do you hear her whining in the background? She's sleeping, and I think she's having bad dreams. So, or maybe she's listening to me, and she's like, dude, shut up already. What are you whining about? But anyway, I want to get back to the list of people on this. So he's also been accused by multiple women before in the past. I'm sure they've made it up too, even though he's on record to say that he's a celebrity and he can go up and he can physically assault women whenever he wants to. He has said this. He's also said that he has walked in on teenage girls getting dressed while they were no clothes on. They were naked. And he walked in on them because he could, because he owned the pageant. But you know what? We're going to let that slide. Why? Because he says he believes in Jesus. He's a Christian. And I'm sure anything that he did in the past that Jesus and God has forgiven him. I know I have. So all this is under the bridge. We don't care. His own ex-wife accused him of assaulting her during their marriage. There was also a case filed by a 13-year-old girl that he was not only assaulted just by him, but by, according to him, his best friend, Jeffrey Epstein. We're not talking about Jeffrey Epstein anymore. I noticed they're talking about Diddy now. Diddy's the new guy. They left Jeffrey Epstein's gone. We don't talk about him anymore. It's Diddy now. Why is it Diddy? Because we have pictures of Diddy with some politician that we saw, Bill Clinton or whoever, Barack Obama. So now that's the new Jeffrey Epstein. They were replacing Jeffrey Epstein because getting a little deep. It's getting a little weird with Jeffrey Epstein. Maybe even they saw some things with Trump and Epstein. They're like, uh-oh, how do we pivot out of this? Yes, Diddy. Diddy's in the news now. This is our pivot. So we're just going to go completely to Diddy. Now let's go to our new potential. By the way, these are going to all be potential defense secretary. Pete Hegseth, who was a Fox News host. Now, in fairness, he was a captain in the National Guard, and I do thank him for his service in the National Guard. I do also want to point out that just because you were part of the service doesn't make you a good human being. It doesn't automatically give you a pass for being a shitty person. So, I still will always thank anybody that has fought for this country. But Pete, just like his boss, he paid a woman not to speak about SA allegations. That he said that he had consensual sex with her, but she came out and said, no, you didn't. There was a bruise on her thigh, and he wound up paying her just to be quiet. And that he has also said, too, that women should not be in combat. So I agree with him that women shouldn't be in combat, but I agree it shouldn't be in the bedroom. On the battlefield, I think anybody who's brave enough to want to fight for this country, they should be able to do that 100%. I don't know why anybody would be against that. And they're also, too, against transgender. And by the way, we're going to see people who are transgender be kicked right out of the military because they just don't like it. It just bothers them so much. And they've attached the word, like I said earlier, that's not even a real thing, woke. The woke military can never be strong. We can't have a woke military because now our military, when we go out there and fight, these guys are out there like in dresses. And our opponent is going to run right over these people because they're in high heel and dresses when they're out there fighting. So we can't have this wokeness in our military. So we're going to get rid of that. So he's angry at women and say that they're not tough enough to be in battle. So anytime I see anybody who disparages women and say they're not tough enough, and then there's sexual assault allegations against them, I don't know. There's something about that connection that I have to at least consider that what she is saying is true. Then you have the head of DOGE, the Department of Governmental, what the hell is it called? Whatever it is. Who cares? It's a made-up position, by the way. It's a made-up position. That's not even a real government position for Donald's new first lady, Melania Trump, Musk. He had conduct at SpaceX where Musk treated women as sexual objects to be evaluated by bra size, constant sexual banter, told employees they can find employment elsewhere if they don't subscribe to the Animal House environment that they have at SpaceX. If you're not down with me being sexualized towards you, get out. If you don't like the other guys doing it, go find another job. And he also offered to buy a horse for a young lady for an exotic massage. He also paid that woman $250,000 after Elon Musk exposed himself to this woman. That's not it. There's more. We have RFK Jr., who's going to be the head of the Health and Human Services, another guy who has absolutely no experience in health and human services other than conspiracy theories about vaccines, which seems to be a big deal in MAGA and on the right. So if you could find a guy that is got a big name and he's prevalent in the conspiracy theories towards vaccines, then we got to get him as part of this administration. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he was accused of groping a woman. He later apologized to her through a text saying he didn't remember the incident, but if he ever made her feel uncomfortable, that he did apologize. And when he was asked about the incident in an interview, he did say, look, I'm no church boy, basically acknowledging that, he's a dude and he does dude kind of things. I'm a dude. And, I like dude kind of things, but assaulting women and doing things against their will, just is not, that's not up my alley. I prefer when I speak to a woman and she looks at me and she goes, you know what? I dig this dude. Yeah, sure. Let's do whatever it is, that we find fit to do. That I find attractive. I don't find it exciting. I don't find it a turn on to do something that's against a woman's will. I don't know. That's, according to our new administration, that's weird. But I still will never submit to that is weird. And of course, RFK Jr. has cheated on his wife numerous times, including the one that he's married to, Cheryl Hines, who you may know her from Curb Your Enthusiasm. The next appointment is Linda McMahon. Now, she is going to be the head of the Department of Education. The funny thing about Linda McMahon is, if you don't know who Linda McMahon is, which I know a lot of you do, she is the wife of the person who was the owner of WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment, which a lot of people know. The Rock, Stone Cold, Hulk Hogan, all these people came from there. So you know a lot of the people who came from that organization. But Linda McMahon, again, who has no experience in the Department of Education, and of course, she was on a show with her husband that was nearly pornographic. It was at a time so sexualized that I think that either of the people who are Jesus freaks and care about grooming children, plenty of children were watching the WWE at the time because it was on national television at 8:00 at night. So there are no filters to children watching that other than a parent saying yes or no. But as we know in this country, there's so many different outlets for kids to get their hands on things. So if you cared so much about the grooming of children, then you would really care about this woman being the health or the head of the Department of Education, which involves children. Go back and look at some of the clips that you would see. I mean, they were outrageous. Even some of the times I'd watch it, I go, Jesus, how are they getting away with this? It was really incredible. But they also have a long history of sexual exploitation. That there was 5 former ring boys who filed a lawsuit alleging that a former WWE announcer groomed and SA'd them, and the McMahons all knew about it and did nothing to this gentleman. And currently, Linda McMahon's husband had to basically step down as chairman of the WWE because he's embroiled in another scandal where he is accused of sexual coercion, assault, and trafficking her, this young lady, to other men, including employees and talent at the WWE. So if you want to be disgusted by the husband of the woman who was just made the Department of Education, read the allegations of this woman on what she is accusing Vince McMahon of doing. Now, of course, we always have to say that accusations are accusations. I mean, they are. There's nothing proven yet, although there's plenty of text messages. In fact, they released some of these text messages that showed a very domineering Vince McMahon towards this woman. So it at least lends some credibility to it, but they're accusations and it's going to go through trial. And I don't know where they have in the trial. Is that going to matter? I mean, his wife now is part of the Trump administration. So if he's found guilty, it's probably because it's a liberal jury and nobody's ever allowed to have any kind of trial now unless it's a jury that's in a red state with all people who voted for Donald Trump. That's apparently what we have to do now. But finally, we all heard the story. The impending attorney general, the person who is going to make the decisions as to how our country is going to go about prosecuting people who need prosecuting. And that is Matt Gaetz, who is, I don't know, he has some lawyer experience. And I don't think to the degree where being appointed as the attorney general is something that makes him qualified for such an incredibly important position. But as we know, he's been accused credibly of paying an underage girl to have sex with him at a party. And he's also allegedly, it turns out that he may have paid numerous girls. Not all of them are underage. A lot of them may have been of age, but he's paid them to have sex with them. And there is a House committee report floating out there that apparently today that the House committee had voted as to whether or not they were going to release it. And they said, no, we're not releasing it. You know why? Daddy told us not to. That's his guy. So doing the right thing is not something we're interested in. This report, we're not going to release it. Now, my question would be is, if I'm Matt Gaetz and this report exonerates you, I would think that I would say, what are you guys doing? Release this report. We've got to see it. Are you kidding me? I want the American public to see this because it's going to exonerate me. I did nothing wrong. But I don't know. Make your own decision as to whether or not you think Matt Gaetz did anything wrong or did nothing wrong, based on the fact that the Republican committee, I want to also make sure that people understand this and they understand this good. This report was done by the House committee. Now, why is that important? Because the House committee is led by Republicans. They are the ones who determine whether or not they want to move forward with this investigation, not the Democrats. Democrats would never have been able to move forward with this investigation even if they wanted to, because they don't have the votes to move through it. But the Republicans did. And do you know why they moved through it? Because Kevin McCarthy was not named Speaker of the House, and there are a lot of people bitter towards Matt Gaetz in the Republican Party. A lot of them still hate him to this day because of what they did to Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy still hates him to this day. And Kevin McCarthy wants this report to come out, and so do other Republicans. And guess what's going to happen? That report's coming out one way or another. That I can promise you. That's coming out, whether it's leaked, whatever. It's coming out at some point. But that is the the Kakistocracy is basically that is a government of the most unqualified idiots that you can possibly put together that we are going through right now. And generally, those types of administrations, people can argue that we've had those here in America before, but those are generally something you'd see in Russia. Like Vladimir Putin has had administrations like that before. Vladimir Putin, what does he do? He puts together administrations of yes men, not people that are going to do checks and balances on the president of the United States, the way this country was meant to do, the way we were supposed to do it in this country the entire time. That's gone. That's what we are now. We are an administration of yes men, and they're going to do whatever Donald Trump, I want to say whatever Donald Trump tells them, but it's really whatever they tell Donald Trump and make him think that it's his idea, and then he tells them, because that's what it is. Donald Trump's not smart enough to come up with any of this stuff. He's just not. I'm going to get my digs in as much as I can because, I'm sure January 20th, everything's changing. All my words, everything that I'm going to have to say, luckily, I'm so small that nobody's going to know what the hell I'm saying, which is good, other than some of the people watching, which, again, I do appreciate anybody watching and tuning in. I know on a lot of these shows, people don't stick through the entire thing, and they maybe give you 10, 15 minutes. So if you've been staying longer than 10 or 15 minutes, that I truly appreciate. If you hit the like button, if you hit the subscribe button, I appreciate that even more. I really do. I hope that, anything I say resonates, anything that I don't say, certainly let me know, and we'll discuss it. Let's go over a couple more of the comments before I move on to the next segment here. JD says it's been constantly proven that people that don't watch any news are more informed than people who watch Fox News. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm going to be talking about that next, JD. Carrie Barron, they made horror show comments on a daily basis. None of their smack was real, all lies. You're exactly right. I mean, it stuck. That's the worst part, is that we have probably the most uninformed electorate that we've ever had in the history of this country. And a lot of that has to do with, as I've said before, I've said it many times on the show, that the facts don't matter. It doesn't matter. It really more matters on, did it resonate with me? And when I heard it, did it make feelings in my body that were like, yes? And is that feeling that I hate liberals so much because I've heard so much about them? I don't even really know about them, but I've listened enough to these podcasters to know that I hate them and they're awful people. And now I'm getting validation from these podcasters as to why I should hate them, even though I did no research as to whether or not what they're saying is true. It resonates now because I've been programmed to hate them. I hear what they're saying, and now the hate continues. And hate might even be the word. Anger, just uncomfortableness of who you are as a person, and it justifies something that it justifies your insecurities about things. Whatever the case is, it resonated, and that's a large part reason as to why Donald Trump has won. And that's one of the things I'm going to go over here in a minute, because if only facts and politics mattered, Donald Trump, first of all, would never even be able to be president. He would never be able to run for president. But if they mattered, let's just say he somehow snuck in. If they did matter, he'd lose all 50 states. Wouldn't even be close. But Robert says, you lost. Now get lost. We don't believe you. See, this is it. I'm telling you, the MAGA people, actually, you came into my show, so shouldn't you get lost? I think at this point, Robert, you need to get lost, because until January 20th, we're running this shit. Is that how you do it? Who the hell knows? So you get lost, Robert, or stick around. I really don't care. It doesn't matter anymore at this point. Yes, Kamala Harris lost the race, and we are now moving into a new administration. I hope you were on earlier, Robert, because I had some questions for some of the MAGAs on, exactly how our life's going to be better and what exactly is going to be put in place, because from the people I talk to on the right, they seem to know a lot more than I do as to why this is going to happen. So I'm excited to hear these answers. And maybe instead of me getting lost, maybe I can join you, Robert. That's maybe the ultimate goal. Let's see. And Carrie Bowen goes on to say, Willie is twisted Willie. How about when Mika does her huffy, repulsed, exacerbated sighs? Joe's little sidekick on the show for the show. Joe, Willie, Mika are the drama. Yeah, I've seen that, Carrie. I've seen that, and she does that dramatic thing. And I will admit, like I said, I don't watch the show. I don't watch it regularly. I only see clips of it because I've given up on cable news a long time ago. And not that I put them in the same category as Fox, but I separate them. One's just a propaganda machine, and the other one is just a machine trying to do their best to make money. And they're doing it by now injecting this Jerry Springer type politics that I find disgusting. I don't find helpful. and I don't find educational at all. Not to say that they are not saying anything that could be educational. I do believe that on the MSNBCs and the CNNs, when they report something with the intention of it being true. But then it's just turned from let's report news to now let's sit around with a panel that yells and screams at each other for a while just so we can draw in more viewers, because that's what viewers like now. And that really bothers me. But let's go on. If you've seen recently, everybody's been saying Donald Trump won by a landslide. This is a mandate. This is a mandate, and this is exactly why everybody needs to listen to MAGA, because we crushed the Democrats. We crushed liberalism. In fact, we crushed it so much that people like Robert, they're going to go around and tell you to get lost. Get out of here. You're done, people. Zip it. We don't need to hear from you anymore. Your side is dead. You no longer exist because we've crushed you. Well, I don't know about that. I don't think they did crush, because if you look at this map here, Donald Trump, as the votes continue to come in, right now sits as the third lowest popular vote total win in the history of this country. It might even go lower than that as the votes come in. He got less than 50% of the vote total. So what does that mean? That means the majority of people did not vote for Donald Trump. The majority of people voted for either Kamala Harris, which made up the majority of that, or they did not vote for Donald Trump. They voted for somebody else. So the mandate that you guys speak of, the only mandate that I see right now is the ones between Donald Trump and Elon Musk palling around with each other all the time. That's the only mandate that I see. Other than that, this isn't even close to a mandate. And I want to express to anybody out there that's worried about the future, that feels like that we got destroyed so badly that there's no coming back from this. The only reason why they may be no coming back from this is because we have an administration that may make sure that we may never come back from this. And we hope that that does not happen. But if we are strong enough, and all the judges that Joe Biden has appointed and is going to appoint before he leaves, that is going to stall a lot of the things that Donald Trump may want to do. The good news is that Kamala Harris, despite only having 3 months to run and getting people to know her, despite having a right-wing propaganda machine that was so loud and so strong, and that has been building, not just for the 3 months that she's been there, but for the 8+ years that Donald Trump has been around in politics. Despite that, despite Joe Biden having what I consider unfair, low approval ratings, if anybody really knew what Joe Biden did for this country, they would understand that they would say, no, Joe, don't jump out. I don't give a shit that you're old and you half the time don't even know where the fuck you're at. What you accomplished was so great and so amazing. We want more of that, but forget about that. Don't even care about interesting you in the facts on that anymore. But despite all that, she barely lost. Barely. Well, what about she got all the swing states? But some of those she barely lost. Again, despite all the things I just mentioned, barely lost. So does that mean that we're screwed forever? No. Does that mean that all the people that voted for Donald Trump are going to vote for him again in the next election? Or they're going to vote for MAGA people? Or they're going to vote in 2022 for this administration? It doesn't. And it also is going to be interesting to see how this administration does in the first year or so. What if the prices of eggs and gas don't magically go down? What if prices do start going up after all the tariffs hit? What if some of the people who voted for Donald Trump, who didn't think their mother-in-law or family members or friends were going to get deported and then come back and say, I made a major mistake. In fact, if you saw, there were Google Trends, and it showed some of the top questions asked after the election. And one of the top questions asked was, can I change my vote? First of all, what kind of voter doesn't know you can't change your vote? First of all, what? Jesus. How do you not know that? But anyway, forget about that. Let's get to the good news about that. The good news is there are a lot of people, not only can I change my vote, there are people on social media, I mean, visibly on videos saying, uh-oh, I made a mistake. In Dearborn, Michigan, Trump is playing us. No, he's not playing you. He played you. Who am I talking about in Dearborn, Michigan? I'm talking about the Muslim community who voted for Donald Trump. If you go look in that particular town, in that particular county, more Muslims voted for Donald Trump than Kamala Harris because they thought he was going to be better for Palestine. What? What? How? What? Where that's really disturbing is that you would think you would be more in tune on what's happening in Palestine than the average American. You would think you would be more in tune on who was more on the side. Well, Kamala Harris didn't do anything about it. Well, first of all, Kamala Harris can't do anything about it. She was the vice president. The vice president has zero power, zero over what happens in Palestine. Well, she can go to Joe Biden. First of all, who's to say she didn't? Second of all, even if she did, she has zero power, none. Do you know the vice president might as well be like the kicker on a football team? Vice president basically sits around and does nothing. Sits around and says, oh, does that guy die? Oh, then I'm up. That's basically what they do. Or they break ties in the Senate. Maybe they're sent on a few trips here and there. That's all they are. They're the kicker of the administration. Sit on the bench until it's time to kick a field goal. Or maybe even the punter with a great offense. They're the punter on a team with a great offense who might see the field once or twice. Other than that, the vice president doesn't have a huge role. This is like stuff we learned in elementary, maybe not elementary school, but junior high school. What do you think? There was a young man who asked this question when they interviewed him. It went viral. Why do you think during the vice presidential debates, they don't ask, what are your plans and what are you going to do for the country? They don't ask the vice president that in the debates. You know why? Because they can't do anything. They can't. What are we doing? Dearborn, Michigan. You would think you'd be more in tune. But he's playing you? He's not playing you. He played you. And now you're regretting your vote. Because you know what's going to happen to Palestine? And you know what's going to happen in Gaza? You might want to turn your TV off. Or you might want to say goodbye to some of the people that you know over there. At least, listen, I'm just going by what I hear. Who is the person in charge of national relations over there now? Mike Huckabee? Have you heard Mike Huckabee's stance on this? He's very pro-Israel. Very pro-Israel. Very. So, and I will tell you, I don't take any satisfaction in knowing that innocent people are going to die. And I don't take satisfaction in kind of like rubbing it in your face. However, I don't feel sorry for you. I don't feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for the people who are going to have to go through what they're going to go through. I don't feel sorry for you. Because if it was that important to you, you would have done just a little bit more research, just a little. And you would have went, let's say you still didn't like the Biden administration and how they handled it. You would have said, all right, at least I'm not voting at all. I'm not voting for either one of them. But you went out and voted for Donald Trump, and he won Michigan. Can I change my vote? Nope. Can't change your vote. Sorry. That's how it goes. I'll get back to some of the comments here in a minute, but I think it might have been Carrie or JD, somebody that had mentioned this earlier, and let me know which one of you mentioned this or somebody else. We were talking about some of the misconceptions on why people voted and what was stuck in their head. Look at this. These are some of the things that people said that when they were asked, did you believe that Kamala Harris supports this policy? At 83%, overwhelming majority. These are swing voters. First of all, swing voters who chose Kamala Harris believe this in 40% of the times, and swing state voters overall who believe it 66%. Okay, I'm sorry. The first column is swing state voters who chose Trump. So we're just going to stick with that because that's the most important one. Do you believe Kamala Harris supports this particular policy? Using taxpayer dollars to pay for transgender surgeries for undocumented immigrants in prison. 83% said yes. Why? Why did they believe that? Well, I mean, it's almost impossible not to believe that. I would say the number one ad that people saw during this election, the number one, if you asked anybody, if you can name just any ad, doesn't matter, Kamala Harris, your local congressman, governor, anything, doesn't matter. What's the number one ad you remember? Everyone's going to say, I remember the one where Kamala Harris was talking about giving prisoners basically free surgeries in prison, and that taxpayers are going to pay for it because Charlemagne the God on his show said, I don't want my taxpayers paying for that stuff. Now, one thing a lot of people didn't know is that that was an interview that she briefly touched on something from 6 years ago. Wasn't even something that she mentioned over the last 4 years, much less the 3 months that she was running for president. Second of all, she was talking about an existing law that is already in place and that existed during the Trump administration. So she was just speaking on the particular law that was already in existence under the Trump administration and what her views were when she was asked about it at the time. But 83% of you, Trump voters, believe that that's Kamala Harris's stance. Can't vote for that. What else? Requiring all car manufacturers in the U.S. to be electric vehicles by 2035. Great. Show me one time where Kamala Harris even mentioned that. She even came close to mentioning it. Can't show. It wasn't even on a commercial. You would think that if she said that, it would have been on one of their commercials. But maybe they said, screw it. The transgender one's just strong enough. We don't need to put it on a commercial because we already got the transgender thing. But I don't know. Maybe there's an ad I didn't see. I'm in Florida. Maybe they didn't feel like they need to run as many ads here in Florida. So maybe I didn't see it. Maybe there's another state where there was plenty of ads where there was Kamala Harris going around saying, yep, I am requiring all cars to be manufactured, or all cars in the U.S. to be manufactured be electric vehicles. Allowing children under 18 to transition genders without informing their parents. This is absolutely insanely ridiculous. It's 77% of people think that that's true. I don't care if you didn't see a commercial. I don't even care if you didn't hear Kamala Harris say it. If you don't have the mental capacity to logistically put that together in your head, that this woman or anybody else in the administration said, we don't care what your parents say. If you want to do it, you do it, and we'll take you right away from your parents. We'll do it. I'm not even going to ask you to find the proof on that. That's so incredibly stupid that anybody could believe that. That's why I'm mad. That's why I'm angry. If you wanted to vote for Donald Trump, if this was all political policy, fine, great. And some of you did. Some of you did it on the economy, despite the economy being the number one economy in the world. Despite having the best economy, in this country that we've had in the last 50 years. It might even be 60 years. That's not me saying it. That is, again, it's a fact. Facts don't matter anymore. Decriminalizing border crossings. Again, that's another thing. They've genius. They've got people thinking that, first of all, they come up with the term open border. So what does open border mean? Open border means, you know, those immigrants trying to come in, why are you trying to stop them? We as Democrats, we want them to come in. They're part of gangs, they're rapists, and they're coming from prisons. We'll figure that out later. Thank you. Let them in, please. Again, logistically, for anybody to think that Democrats just let anybody in, doesn't matter. We'll sort it out later. And even if they do kill and murder people, we don't care. You know why? Because we don't care about the American people. We don't care about their safety. We don't care about their well-beings. We just care more about people that have it rougher. That's all. That's all we care about. So, yeah, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because Kamala Harris wants rapists and murderers to come in. Now, they don't care about the rapists and people who sexually assault women here in our country because they're being named into the administration. That's okay. So I guess if you're American, sexual assaulting Americans are fine. We could do that here in this country, but if you come from another country, that is something we will not stand for. Let's just go over a couple more because these are so ridiculously insane. Allowing illegal immigrants is another immigrant one, convicted of crimes to stay in America. Kind of already addressed that. Allowing abortion. Oh, another one. Allowing abortion up until the day of birth. Genius. I tell you, this propaganda machine, absolute genius. Genius. They did a great job. You can't stop it. You can't stop the machine. I have a rage against the machine. But my rage doesn't matter anymore because that's what people want to believe. They want to believe this nonsense that a woman has been carrying. She gets to her 9 months and then she's sitting around. She's going, you know what? I really want to have this kid. You know what? We have laws now and I want to vote for Kamala because she's going to continue to allow me to just say, you know what? Let's remove this kid. I've made the decision. After buying the crib, this is Pete Buttigieg responded this brilliantly. This woman has carried it to term. She has bought the crib, given it a name. From all accounts that I've heard, any woman that carries a baby to term already has the deepest connection with this child that seems almost unbreakable. You can't break this. But brings it to term. And then she says, I liked clubbing. I liked going out better. You know what? Let's get rid of it. Gonna get rid of the kid. Doc, hey, do me a favor. I'm gonna be in tomorrow morning. I know it's a 9-month kid. Just pull it out. Get rid of it. I don't care what you do with it. That's absurd. That's incredibly absurd. And it's offensive that anybody would think that that is the case. The only time, only time that this happens, only time, is when the mother's life is at stake. When the child's life is at stake. That's the only time this happens. It's even more rare than a transgender person walking into your bathroom. I mean, it literally almost never happens. So when they ask the question to the Democrats, do you approve and do you support 9th-month abortions? They do it as a trick question. And quite frankly, if I'm running for office, I'm saying, yeah, I do. But let me explain why. Let me explain in the almost no cases as to why I do. And then I'd also turn it around on them, kind of with the gun thing. So you keep saying, well, We give up one little thing on the gun thing. You know what that leads to? Getting rid of all guns. So if that's the case, if we get rid of one thing on abortion, doesn't that mean we're leading to a point where we're getting rid of it all? That's your logic. That's what you guys say about gun laws. So if it's the same with gun laws, of course, to them, it's not going to be. Even though the reason why most logistical people want to have laws, sensible laws about guns, is to make sure children are not dying. I mean, what am I missing here? I'm missing something, right? I'm missing something. I don't know what's going on, but clearly I'm missing something. Last thing I want to show, this is going to bother a lot of people, I know. But I want to show this map of what would happen if only certain demographics were to vote. If only certain people could vote. So let's go over this map here. I hope you can see this. This is Midwest Sandernista posted this. I don't know if the Sandernista herself came up with this, but she came up with different maps, or she at least posted it, different maps as to what would happen if certain electorates voted. The first one here is if there was 100% turnout, which means if every voter could vote, Kamala Harris would win 51% of the vote, and she would have 319 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 219. Okay, let's go down to the next one. This one would be if only white people voted, just white people, just like me, white guy like me. 212 electoral votes to Kamala Harris, 326 electoral votes to Donald Trump. Kamala Harris would only win 43% of the vote, where Donald Trump would win 55% of the vote. So if it was just me and my people, that's what you call them, that's what would happen. He would have won an even now that would have been more of a mandate. If you would have wanted to call it a mandate, you could call that a mandate. So let's say if it was only non-educated white people, if only non-educated white people, this is the landslide that they could have voted, or they could have bragged about. 36% of people would have voted for Kamala Harris, 62% for Donald Trump. You could see he wins with a huge victory, not just in the popular vote, but the electoral vote. Here's where it gets interesting too. If only college-educated whites could vote. Well, if only college-educated whites could vote, Kamala Harris wins with 53% of the vote, as opposed to 44% of the vote. She wins with 294 electoral votes. If only people of color could vote. Obviously, we talk about landslides. 73% would have voted for Kamala Harris. 24% would have voted for Donald Trump. So there kind of goes the theory that black people were starting to migrate to Donald Trump. Maybe he picked up a few, but more black people and people of color voted for the Democrats, just like they always do, than any other people in the electorate. Now, I don't even want to get into the discussion where people say, "What has Democrats ever done for the black people?" And what are they? It's not a discussion I want to get, because we talked about this on the show, and maybe we'll get into the discussion when Lana's on the show. But or if you want to talk about it in the comments, we can. But here's if only black people could vote. You could see, obviously, it'd be the biggest landslide in American history, where 89% of the electorate would have voted for Kamala Harris, where only 9% for Donald Trump. And if only Hispanic or Latino people could vote, same thing, 60% with Kamala Harris and 37% for Donald Trump, her winning another landslide in the electoral college. And finally, if only Asian people can vote, another blowout win for Kamala Harris. So you get the picture at this point. I found that very interesting. I don't know what your comments or your thoughts are on that, but that was a pretty interesting map. But I want to catch it. God, I've been over 2 hours. I got to wrap this up here soon. Jesus. I've been yapping for 2 hours. Well, I mean, lot of great people watching, a lot of great people commenting. Let me catch up on a couple more on this. JD says that that's exactly what Piers Morgan was talking about yesterday. I believe Kyle Kalinske absolutely destroyed him in a debate on the debate why the Democrats lost. I'm glad you brought that up because I want to say something about that very quickly. A couple things about that. That Trump being better for Palestine is sad. 100% agree. Makes no sense. The guy who let Israel annex the Golan Heights and moved the Israel capital to Jerusalem. Again, you would think that those the people who voted, the Muslim people, would be more in tune with this stuff, but I don't know. I guess they don't. Shame on you, CA California. I don't know what Dwayne Roberts is referring to. It might be talking about when I was going over the popular vote where that gap is closing and many of those votes are coming from California. Maybe that's what you were talking about. And JD, these people are pro-life until the baby is born. That's when they stop caring. No paternity leave. You're right. School lunches, they're mad about. And just tell you to pull up your bootstraps, which is something that was made that idea was made prominent during the Trump administration. To pull yourself up by your bootstraps. As you can see, my dog and my cat are behind me, and they're full-fledged wrestling, and that goes on basically all day. My dog will eventually walk away from this because she's had enough. But I also want to talk about real quick the Democrats and their strategy for this moving forward. I'm glad you brought up Kyle Kalinske, and there's so many different people on the left, so many voices. You thought you had Joe and Mika for a little while, but they have disappeared. And I suspect that you may see that more in legacy and corporate media. Unfortunately, I think you're going to see a lot of people cower down because they legitimately are afraid of what the Trump administration is going to do. But if the Democrats want to have a chance to win back these voters, what they're going to need to do is they're going to have to stop being the smartest and most intellectual people in the room. Now, you brought up Kyle Kalinske, and this is the reason why you brought him up. I find him smart. I find him good, but he'll say some things that irritate me. Pod Save America, love the show, but they'll say things that irritate me. Sam Cedar, Emma, his counterpart there, like the show. They say things that irritate me. Even Jon Stewart has been saying things that irritate me. The list goes on and on. And the reason why they irritate me is because as much as they wanted Kamala Harris to win, or the Democrats, or they wanted to make sure that Donald Trump didn't, they still had to be the intellectuals. They still had to point out why Joe Biden did this, or Kamala Harris's stance on Gaza, or this and that. I get it. I get that you don't want to compromise your intellect, and you want to let people know, hey, I just want to let people know, even though I don't like Donald Trump, I still don't like that this has happened. Great. I get it. But right now, we're not in those times anymore. I'm sorry. So unless you get your act together like they have, unless you start getting together and coming up with talking points and bullet points to talk about every day, and you start coming up with together how to deflect the talking points that the right paints and makes about you on a daily basis. That's why you lost this election. Has nothing to do with Kamala Harris. Has nothing to do with her campaign. It doesn't even have anything to do with Joe Biden. I don't want to hear that. Has nothing to do with Joe Biden. Has nothing to do with Gaza. Has nothing to do with any of that. The reason why you lost this campaign is because you allowed for years and years and years and years for them to create the narrative of who you are, and you did not defend it properly. You were too afraid maybe to defend part of it. And those days are gone. They're done. You can defend. You can even still defend your position on something, but say that it is not something that we are focusing on to make egg prices lower or the gas prices. If you're asked about transgender, you could say, look, what our stance is on transgender is that we see a lot of transgenders in this country who are being bullied. I also hear that the transgender community, the number one source of death for the transgender community is suicide. You know, me as a parent, I'm not a parent, but the lawmaker or whoever, if they are a parent, can say, me as a parent, I feel pretty queasy about that. I feel queasy about, regardless of whether I got along with my kid or not, whether or not my kid was transgender, gay, Christian, a 76ers fan, if you're a Celtics fan like me, whatever. If I came home and they were hanging from the ceiling, I have sympathy towards that. I have sympathy towards other parents that I don't want that to happen. But at the same time, there's not a whole bunch of transgender people out there. So I'm just trying to say that, yes, we care about the human aspect of it, but overall, we care about all American people and we want to work for the American people. That's what we need to do. I don't need rants for an hour. I don't need full clips about your stance on Gaza anymore. Just don't need it. Don't want to hear it. Because you're even trying to make it sound like Kamala Harris might not even be good for Gaza. So if you're confusing, because I've been on this show long enough, and I got a small show. I've been on this show long enough, though, to know that some people on the right watch this show, not for a long time, but they watch it for periods at a time. And if it's happening on my show, I know for a fact it's happening in droves on their shows. And if you give them an inch, or you give somebody that's confused and is trying to learn both sides, if you give them an inch, when now we're going up against somebody that wants an authoritarian regime, who wants a fascist government that you keep reporting all the time on your show. You keep reporting that you want this fascist regime. But we're still going to say why Pete Buttigieg shouldn't have said this, or Kamala Harris shouldn't have said this. Joe Biden did this again. Days are over. They have to be. Time to get on the same page. I made a joke not that long ago on the show, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, that maybe it's time for the left to start their own cult. And when I say cult, I mean that in a joking manner, because anybody who's intelligent can't get in a cult. But it, metaphorically, time to form your own cult, because we are smart enough to deflect the ridiculousness. We are smart enough to come up with talking points. And guess what? All of our talking points are going to be true. And they're going to be facts. But we got to present them a way where we hammer it into people's heads. Do you know where I go as my job? I'm a mortgage loan officer, which right now it sucks. And it's going to suck for a long time now with this new administration, at least according to reports. But again, I've asked MAGA, I've challenged, if you don't mind, please, let's show me and tell me how we're going to get we're going to get the interest rates down. But anyway, long story short, I go in and I speak to real estate agents. And do you know what I do almost every time? I repeat some of the things over and over and over and over again. Because if I say it once, twice, it's not going to stick with them. But if you continue to repeat things over and over and over again, it's going to stick. That's not a magical formula. That's human nature. Why do you think when you go for tests, you study? You don't just read something and go, I got it. Because everybody passed tests if they do that. You got to read it over and over and over again until it sticks. That's what we got to do. Over and over and over again until it sticks. Stop trying to be the smart person. Who gives a shit? I mean, that's so frustrating for me. I even hear it on people like Pod Save America. Well, you know, I think they got away from the working class. What the fuck are you talking about? Joe Biden is one of the best working class presidents that we've seen in our lifetime. What are you talking about? He's the most pro-union president. He's trying to eliminate student loan debt, which he did. to some extent, not to the extent that he wanted to, because what he tried to do was overturned by courts. That he's not for the working class. He's trying to get these junk fees and all these things removed. This is all stuff that it impacts the working class. Why? Because he doesn't have the magic wand to control inflation. Nobody does. But I'll tell you one thing. This country handled inflation better than every other country that was affected by COVID. Not even close. We're the envy of the world on the way we handle COVID. He's not for the working class. Saying this after the election. What? Are you insane? That just drives me nuts. And these are smart people. These are smart people. But what do they, I don't understand. Do they want to give some inches here to the Trump side, to the MAGA side? What for? You're not even telling the truth. You're lying. Or either that, or you don't understand. And that concerns me. I don't know. That's exactly, I'm sorry, JD says, that's exactly what Kyle Kulinski took away from this election. The Democrats need to repackage and, as you mentioned, be less intellectual and more on brand. Hey, I'm going to, was that with Piers Morgan? Is that what you said? Yeah, with Piers Morgan. It's hard for me to listen to that guy because he's just so clearly, he's so smug about this election now. And he's one of these guys who pretends like he's not a Donald Trump supporter. He clearly is, just like Joe Rogan pretended for so long. He's not. He clearly is. I don't want to hear this shit. Biden was absolutely pro-working class. Man, I have so much more to get to. God, I've been on for 2 hours and 20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more things because this kind of resonates with what we've been talking about. And this, I came across this article, and this article scared me a lot. And this article was pointing out from a gentleman who was a Russian defector. And he did an interview back in 1984, and they were going back to this interview on basically what Russia's plans are to attack the United States without doing it militarily. And the way they were going to do it was through psychological warfare. And there were specific plans on what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. I want to read some of the things in this article that I highlighted. There's a few pages here. I didn't highlight everything, but it is interesting stuff. Take a listen to this. Tell me if it's something that scares you too, because this frightens me. And, if there's anything that you wanted to add. But back in 1954, early in the Cold War, the Soviet Union created the Committee for State Security, more commonly known in the West as the KGB. The group came to oversee the Soviet Union's internal security, secret police, and domestic and foreign intelligence operations. Across the world, the KGB did whatever it could to thwart pro-Western and anti-Soviet political movements and figures. Unclear were the group's long-term plans involving the U.S. One glimpse, however, came from a former KGB agent named Yuri Bezmenov, who defected to Canada in 1970. He claimed to know details of a Soviet plan to undermine the U.S., not on the battlefield, but in the psyche of the American public. So, he claimed to know this stuff, but either the guy's a genius to have come up with this himself and he was lying about it, or this is true. I'm going to surmise that this guy did know exactly what these plans were, and then he laid these out in this interview. But he defined what was called ideological subversion. And what that was is basically to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interest of defending themselves, their family, their community, and their country. Bezmenov describes this process as a great brainwashing that has 4 basic stages. The first stage is called demoralization. And according to the former KGB agent, that is the minimum number of years, 15 to, it takes 15 to 20 years to achieve. And that is the minimum number of years it is to re-educate one generation of students that is normally exposed to the ideology of its country. In other words, the time it takes to change what people are thinking. Referring to such people, they are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. He was alluding to the Pavlov's dog theory that the dog does whatever it hears. When it hears something, it reacts to that sound or whatever the case is. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information. Even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception of the logic and the logic of behavior. Demoralization is a process that is irreversible. Bezmenov described the state of a demoralized person this way. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore, as I've said numerous times in this podcast tonight. A person who is demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him a concentration camp, he still will refuse to believe it. And until he receives a kick in his fan bottom, as he says, when a military boot crashes his balls, and then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragedy of demoralization, or the situation of demoralization. Finally, a few other things just to wrap this up. Once demoralization is completed, the second stage of ideological brainwashing is destabilization. During this 2 to 5 year period, what matters is the targeting of essential structural elements of a nation: economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. Basically, the subverter, Russia in that case, would look to destabilize every one of those areas in the United States, considerably weakening it. The third stage would be crisis. It would take only up to about 6 weeks to send a country into crisis. This crisis would bring a violent change of power, structure, and economy, and would be followed by the last stage, which is the scariest one of them all. And I've talked about this before. Alana and I discussed this before on the show, and that is normalization. And that's when your country is basically taken over, living under a brand new ideology and a brand new reality. And that's exactly what's going on. And these steps that he was talking about were going to take place without social media, without podcasters, without right-wing propaganda media that is now helping this cause along. So the normalization, I think, is what scares me the most, because I have said that before in the past, that we're getting to a point where things are just getting too normal. We have normalized Donald Trump. That's why I get mad at cable news. I'll never watch cable news again. If you're going to sit here and criticize Kamala Harris, when I see Diana Bash, I'll watch cable news when there's a town hall. Kamala Harris does a town hall. And when it's over, Kamala Harris. And the only reason why I listened to the commentary afterwards, because I wanted to see Kamala Harris's reaction with the people in the town hall. She was reacting with people, talking to them. It was just interesting to watch her interaction with those people. But during that time, the commentary, post-commentary, Diana Bash, I'm getting text messages from people, and these people are saying, did she meet the moment? They don't think she did. She didn't meet the moment. From the people that first of all, who are the people you're getting text messages from? I have no idea. Maybe they're Trump supporters. But she didn't meet the moment. We're going to sit here and we're going to compare Kamala Harris to Donald Trump, who's a convicted felon, who is found liable of sexual assault, who started an insurrection against this country, who stole classified documents, there's too many things to name. And we normalized Donald Trump. Well, we got to be fair. Kamala Harris said she was going to do this about the housing industry. But what about Donald Trump? What's his plan? He had no plan ever about the housing industry. His plan about the housing industry was to talk to you about Hannibal Lecter and sharks and batteries and boats. That was his plan for the housing. His plan for the economy, it was nonsense about windmills. We're going to act like these two are the same. We're going to even act like him and Biden are the same. They're not. There's not one political figure that I can think of. Well, yeah, there's a few. Marjorie Taylor Greene, people like that. Put them in that Donald Trump boat with the battery. Eliminate them. Outside of that, can't think of any political figure that I would compare to Donald Trump as somebody we need to take seriously. People make the case George W. Bush was overall a way worse president for this country than Donald Trump was in his first term. There's a solid argument for that. I mean, guys got us in millions of Americans killed, maybe not millions, but a lot of Americans killed in war that we should have never been in. The tensions with other countries, that just all kinds of things that happened during the Bush administration. You can make the case that he was worse overall for the country. But comparing policy, comparing intellect, comparing anything with that woman, that's why I watch cable news. So it's almost hard to listen to the people that I love because they were normalizing him in a sense. And Democrats, you better be done with that. Liberals, progressives, quite frankly, I hate the labels. I don't even care about labels. Like I tell people all the time, understand this. I said this earlier, I don't need the Democrat to win. I don't need Kamala Harris to win. I don't need Joe Biden to win. I don't need a particular person to win. I need ideals to win. I need plans to win. I need decency to win. I need people who love this country to win. There's a huge argument Donald Trump loves this country more than anybody. I disagree wholly. I think he loves himself more than anybody. He doesn't love this country. He doesn't love you. He doesn't care about you. And you might start seeing that as time goes on. But the comparison makes me sick to my stomach. And it really makes me sick when it's people that I like. When I hear Jon Stewart, his very first night back on The Daily Show, I mean, I was counting that down. When Jon Stewart left The Daily Show, I went in a tizzy. I was like, this can't happen. Especially with this election coming up, and that was right before 2016. You can't leave Jon Stewart. What are you kidding me? His first show back at The Daily Show. Basically, the whole show was ragging on Joe Biden and his age. The whole show. And towards the end, basically said, no matter what happens in this election, we'll all be fine. What? Jon Stewart? Of all people? Wow, man. That sucks. You're doing it now? Then I don't know, man. We're in trouble. We're in trouble if Jon Stewart's doing it. We're in trouble if Pod Save America is doing it. Because they're, out of the few podcasts that lean towards the left, they're one in the top 10. Jon Stewart's another one. But if they're doing this, then we're in trouble. I love Sam Cedar. I think he's great. I think Emma's great. But I don't need your commentary on Joe Biden. Don't need it anymore. Not anymore. Maybe you guys just all thought we were going to win anyway. So you could still say whatever it is you wanted to say. But I hope this is a lesson learned. Because there's a new sheriff in town. And I'm not talking about MAGA. Something even more powerful than MAGA. The sheriff in town are unregulated 3-hour podcasters and TikTok. That's the new sheriff in town. You think your intellectual talk is getting over on people? What? I don't care about you. They don't care how smart you are. They don't care about how funny you are. What they care about is hearing what will resonate. And they need to hear it over and over and over again. And you guys better get your act together. There better be talking points. There better be deflection. And there better be no more talking bad about your own side. Not in this day and age. That's just where we're at now. We need to start our own mini cult. That's unfortunate. I hate saying that. I hate the idea of it. But we have to do it. It has to be done. No other way. But I think I've said enough. Let me see if there's any. Are there any other comments that I didn't read? And then we'll get the hell out of here. Biden was absolutely pro-working class. Yes, that I think we read that. And JD says 100% agree. I'm not sure which one you'd agree with, JD, but whatever it was, man, I really do appreciate you coming in. I appreciate everybody who stuck through here and watched this. JD, Patricia, who came in earlier, Lil Philosophy, my buddy who argues with me on the comment section, usually it's after the show's over. I get the comments from him. Carrie, Boran, Robert, who came in, Dwin, Robert, who came in as well. And anybody who was watching, was there anybody watching I have some people watching on Instagram too. It's hard to see that though. I don't get to see that as much. But anyway, guys, please, if you can, if anything that I said you like, just one thing, just go, you know what? That's worth hitting the like button. Let's get this guy a break. JD, thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you for the subscription. And thank you for the podcast. Also, too, just so you know, normally I have a partner. Her name is Lana Quest, and she is generally on with me on Tuesday nights. And we go live. And then usually I do one by myself later on in the week. We were supposed to go live last night. She was not feeling well. And then some things come up for me. So I was like, you know what? Let's just cancel the show last night. I'm doing it live tonight. Usually Lana would be with me. She thought she had COVID. Luckily she doesn't. But I do appreciate anybody who can like, subscribe, share the show. We really appreciate it. And please join me again. I might be back on later in the week, but if not, we will definitely be back on Tuesday night, 8 o'clock live. You can also join Lana. She does her own show. Generally, it's on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. It's called The Quest Show. You could go back and look at some of her old clips, see if any of that stuff resonates with you. I hope it does. Again, thank you guys so much for joining, and we will check you guys out next time I'm on. You can hit that notification bell too as well. That'll let you know next time we're on. But for sure, 8 o'clock Tuesday night live. And then I may be on again sometime this week. Thank you guys so much. Great to meet some of you. And we'll be talking again soon.